we're going to wait for a couple of minutes for people to come in from the, and Janice needs to be promoted for the, okay, she's gonna observe, yeah. She figured this would be a learning experience. Little does she know, right?
Hello, Nada. Oh, she can't hear me.
She should be able to.
She's on mute,
Oh, you're on mute.
Hi,
Good to see you.
so we need
good
to
to
look.
see you.
Always good to see
I'll
me
send
and
her a
not
text.
viewing me.
Asked him what he was doing in Belfast.
Oh,
He met for his right.
okay.
She said the ID is not working.
That Janice.
Yeah. Eight, 4, 6, 2492.
I can't see the screen, just telling Janice is.
She's not there.
8, 4, 6, 2492, 7, 6, 1,
Here's
1.
no. Need a
That's one. They look like my water. Oh, no.
Yes, right there.
You know how to send Janice an invitation from where, which is to go to the attendee list. And no, at the bottom of the screen there. No, go back to where you were before. Okay, and go to the, where it says participants, yeah. Click on that and say invite. All right, and then do email on the right there, the top right. Okay, and use Gmail, yeah, and it should tell you right. Oh, you're not logged into your Gmail here.
Left.
Copy the invite from that little tab there. That I know participants, you can copy the link and then you can paste it into your email. And see what all that.
It was coming in. With the child, yes.
It's asking for the passcode. Okay, wait a minute, I'm making, why is it a passcode here?
It's right under the meeting in the top box.
Let's see what they're talking about here.
Put it on there.
All right, so
It's on the
Steve,
website. though.
all right, Steve is gonna
What's your email?
Can you? Do you know Janice's email?
Right.
I.
do.
Oh. You know Janice's email?
It is.
I think I got it.
It is Janice MB58 at gmail.com. MB58 at gmail.com. We can do another training session with Janice in between. That's what we did at the very beginning of the thing.
Okay.
And we just sit there and, because she picks up the webinar link and sees how to do that, then that, you know, she comes right in as a panelist. And that should have, yeah.
Hi, sir. That's
Okay.
clear, but I also want to let you know that I've been diagnosed with pneumonia and won't be able to make it tonight's meeting.
So she looked for
Eleanor, she's
Yeah.
not here to-
so much.
She's sick.
Is that from Eleanor or for Janice there?
Eleanor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's letting me
Is
know.
Eleanor
that-
joining?
Yeah, she wasn't planning to come, yeah, right.
Is Eleanor joining us on Zoom?
Yeah, she has got pneumonia and said she wasn't gonna be joining us at all. Yeah. She seems to have had a run of bad luck.
You staring me down, Russ?
Carol, I was on a Zoom.
We hear you loud. Right, I think we're ready to rock and roll here. This is the regular monthly meeting of the Needham Housing Authority Board of Commissioners and the High Rock Home LLC Board. And this is a hybrid meeting that has been properly noticed, but pursuant to an extension of the act relative to extending certain states of emergency accommodations that was signed on March 29th, 2023 by Governor Healy, saying that we would be continuing for the next couple of years, having a hybrid meeting format where both public attendees and board members can either attend in person or remote. And we still need to work out our remote attendance technique here, but we can work on that between now and the next meeting. I'm going to call the roll. Reg Foster is here.
Eleanor's not here, so Ed Scheidler is here.
Penny Kirk here.
And Janice.
Janice Bennett is here remote.
Great. And Eleanor Evans, our vice chair, is not here. I got a message earlier today that she's come down with pneumonia, unfortunately, and will not be able to
Oh, that's
do have a quorum. And I just also want to note for the record that adequate notice of this meeting was provided to the secretary, by the secretary of the Needham Housing Authority, to the town clerk that was posted on April 14th, 2023. So I think we're ready to go. We have a guest with us tonight. And I'm going to propose to our board members that we take certain agenda item out of order, out of consideration of his being here. And it's Dan Chen. He's the principal in charge of the BH&A team that's been working for the last 8, 10, 11 weeks since January 9th, whatever it has been. So I guess maybe getting to be 12 or 13 weeks on the conceptual design for the Needham Linden Chambers redevelopment project. And so with everybody's okay, we'll take him out of order. This is agenda item number F1 on your agenda, and then we will circle back to the beginning with resident comment, and there might even be resident comment.
Then,
Well, you might even have some comment on the design you're seeing. Yeah,
no, London Chambers, I've got to go. I
yeah.
can't be here until, I've got till 8 o'clock.
Okay,
well, it makes sense, and we don't hold Dan up.
Well, then go ahead and you make your comments if you want to do that briefly, because I do
Thank
want to have them meet. And I'm sorry, but maybe you can watch the tape,
Certainly.
afterwards to
Yeah,
see
I
this,
will.
because this is extraordinarily interesting. We are starting 20 minutes late, so that doesn't help anything here either.
Thank you very much. We are having Janice Bennett is going to the Mass Union Spring Convention the weekend of May 5th, I think it is. And she will be staying for the one day, no, she's going for 2 days, but she got a scholarship from Mass Union. And hopefully we may have one other person going. We're gonna have a quick meeting on Saturday. Because we have to vote on it, and if we do not have a quorum, we're just gonna leave everything status quo. Janice will be the only one going.
I hope someone else goes.
But don't count on it, but they would just go for the one day. So we can do that. And the other thing I wanted to just bring up, Mayor Wu from Boston has instituted a free tuition for Boston residents only at 6 community colleges. So if you know anybody who's a Boston resident, that's for free. So on that note, I also called Governor Healy because this program was for Boston residents only, which I felt was kind of, well, I know it's Boston. So anyway, so I called Governor Healy's office and Maureen Callahan at Denise Garlick's office. And Governor Healy is working on a statewide free tuition community college. Hopefully, the question if $20 million that she earmarked for the program would be enough. Unfortunately, she's saying it's for people 25 and older. I hardly disagree with. I think it should be 18-year-olds and older. So I'm waiting. I did call her office and I'm waiting to hear back from them. And that's all I have to tell you.
Great. Well,
Yeah,
thank you. And
great.
Sue, while you're
Sure.
still here, because I wanted to
Yeah.
mention this when you were here. I think some of us, or maybe everybody here, knows that Mel King passed away since our last meeting. And I just wanted to give him the role he's played in the
Fantastic.
Boston last 50 or 60 years, and leaving behind the Mel King Institute, and Janice has gotten a tremendous amount of benefit from the Mel King Institute, as has many resident commissioner predecessors to Janice
And residents.
and residents.
Yep.
I just want to note that we've lost a great man. And I want to recognize that in the minutes. So that's it. So I didn't want you to miss that part either.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
Okay, so if all the other residents are here, you're going to see a very fascinating presentation. Dan, let me turn it over to you so Sue at least gets the first 5 or 10 minutes. Maybe you should just jump right into the pictures here. I don't think you need any introduction. You're leading a 10-person team that's working on every aspect of this. We've had 8, was that our 8th or 9th design meeting since the beginning, or 7th? Yeah. So go for it, Dan.
Great, okay, thank you. Again, my name is Dan Chen. I'm principal with PHSA.
Speak up too, because you've got, this is where your speaker phone is here.
So we're architects working on Linden Chambers with the team here. So with that, I'll quickly, we've been working on this since January, so it's been about 3 months now. And so the goal really was to understand the potential of the redevelopment opportunities at Linden Chambers. So if I can go to the next slide. This is kind of where we are. We're in this yellow building. That's the community building here. And then you have the remaining Linden side, and then there's the 5 chambers building. So this kind of gives you an existing condition where of the current sort of campus we have here next. So we've been working with the team with Rich and Cheryl and Steve about potential redevelopments here. What we term it 1A, 1B, and 2 really is a phasing strategy about how do you redevelop this area in terms of testing the massing, the density, the number of units, and also surface parking. So the next 2 slides you'll see is really these 2 yellow buildings here. They're at the moment identical. This is what we typically use on the floor plan, where you see that the building is surrounded, or the building surrounds a courtyard that faces Linden Street. And then the lobby area is in the center. We have 2 elevators that services this building. And then we have a large amenity room space. And just as a comparison, this room we're in now is about 1,000 square feet. That amenity space you're looking at is about 3 times the size of this current room. So that kind of gives you a scale of some type of common function on the first floor. If we can go to the next slide. And this is a typical layout where you have the other 2 floors where you have each with 25 units with a double of the corridor, and the middle portion is where the elevator is, and so we located the elevator here really is to try to cut back on the distance to both sides of the building. And I'll mention the building is shaped this way so that we wanted to respect Linden Street in that we didn't want to have this very long bar building against Linden Street. So by including a courtyard, by sort of pulling the building in a U shape, it presents a sort of a breakup that this large facade along Linden Street. So next slide. And this building here in yellow is what we term as phase 2. In this building here, again, this is a new building. We are hoping to again testing the redevelopment opportunities or the potential here. And in this phase 2 building, we have sort of partial 4-story here, where there's a mix of 3 and 4 stories, and for a total of about 100 units. So in phase 1A and 1B, we're hoping to achieve that about 150 units, and then phase 2 about 100 units in a 3 and 4-story building. And the reason that we were able to gain some height, one is the height or the hill is towards this area, and 2, that we really are, the goal is trying to pull away from the Maple Street neighborhood here. And so that's that. And then the next 2 slides you'll see, if I can go to the next slide, is the floor plan layout of this phase 2. So here you see that the building is broken up into these Z shapes, such that we can have some sort of amenity space against on the first floor, and then there's some additional units on the first floor, and so really the goal is to and make this first floor level as open as possible, and you can kind of see that it's surrounded by 3 courtyards. If I can go to the next slide. This will give you a typical floor plan where we have 2 floors of this, and it has around 33 or 32 units per floor. Again, with the elevator located centrally, trying to cut down on the distance to the furthest unit. And these units are all 1 bedrooms that you see here. Their size range anywhere between 575 to around 600 square feet. As a comparison, the current Linden units, the studio units, are around 410 square feet. The studio units in the Chambers building is around 435 square feet. So if I can go to the next slide. And this is the top floor, and this is where that partial 4-story building is. And so it's really only on the side that faces the current High Rock Estate houses, and you'll soon see sort of in the aerial view what I'm saying. And then there may be a potential for a roof deck here over the 3-story volume, which is that white box you see on the north. Now you're sort of looking at the roof of the 3-story volume. And the reason we did that is so that trying to bring down the volume that faces Maple Street neighborhood on that side of the site. Next. So here these are some very quick or preliminary aerial. And just to orient you, we're sort of high above the High Rock Middle School, looking through the field. And then on the left, you're seeing phase 1A. On the right, you're seeing phase 1B. Between them is the surface parking lot. And further all the way to the right is phase 2. And so you sort of see the splitting up of that building with the partial 4-story on the right, and then the 3-story faces Maple Street neighborhood, which is those houses that you see just beyond. So the goal here really is to give you a sense of what this development and the height, we wanted to test. Now, because of the rendering, we had to sort of assign some materials to it. This is really quite preliminary, despite how sort of finished this image looks. If I can go to the next slide. So here's a view where we're standing at the corner just on Linden Street and Blake Street. You're sort of slightly past Blake Street. Just to your right is the ranch house, and incidentally, we met with the abutter last week. And the owner of that ranch house was here. So she was sort of concerned about the height, about the view, the privacy of her bedrooms and so on. So, and we understand that from the others that there's also severe flooding in this area during heavy rain. But really, I think this view is trying to give you a sense of the size of the massing that we're talking about, the 3-story building along Linden Street. Next slide. Here you move down the road a bit. Now we're at the corner of the High Rock Middle School Road, and then on Linden Street. Here you're seeing the courtyard of we'll call phase 1A, and slightly beyond is phase 1B. In between them is the parking lot. And so we also are trying to sort of generate or create some, it's not just a blacktop surface parking lot, we're really trying to create some sort of connection between them with greenery. But here though also is that because it is a surface parking lot, so there are balances in terms of providing that on-surface parking relative to the density here. Incidentally, we have around 150 parking spaces planned for this development for a total sort of future density of around 250 units currently. Next slide. And here you're standing on the corner of Sylvan and Linden, looking back down Linden Street. On your left is the baseball field, and then on the right you're looking into the courtyard of phase 1B, and then further beyond is phase 1A. Again, that kind of gives you a sense. We have not sort of added any people entourage, and these really are very rendering that just sort of came out of the computer. But I wanted to bring, we shared this with Reg and Cheryl during this our bi-weekly meeting this morning, just so that this is kind of given the group here a sense of what a 3-story means in a U configuration along Linden Street. And if I can go to the last slide. And here is where we are. We're the 3rd week of April. Per our schedule, we would deliver a feasibility study that is based on some of these images that you see with a cost plan to understand really what all these means in terms of the development, in terms of cost. And then if you can go to the next slide, this is sort of the overall schedule. It's quite long. So again, we're still sort of at that investigation beginning phase. And so these are some of the progress that we have been making on this project. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we do some question and answer for Dan. We'll start with the board members first, and then we'll go to the residents, and also we'll take questions from any of the residents that are also attending the meeting as well. So just to get you ready for that, Steve. So I'm going to start with Penny, you or Ed, whoever wants to go first.
I'll go. The buildings that are right on Linden, the U-shaped buildings. Did you say they're 2 stories or 3?
There's 3 stories.
3 stories.
Yes.
And then the one in the back, which have a
There-
4th story.
Yeah, so it's 3 stories facing Maple Street neighborhood on that cul-de-sac, and then it's 4 stories towards the back right there. And the reason is that we've also cited such that we were able to take advantage of the hillside towards that back area. So by burying the bigger building bar back there, I think it helps to build up our density that's needed, but also pull as far away from sort of the.
And I think if you see that little dot on above the pictures, the little tiles of people, up, the white one there. No, not that one, the one there, right above that. See, above the middle of that. Over left, right there. You can change the video. There's another one I think you can do, or one of those, we'll put it across the top. And then you can kind of see the whole picture here.
I don't, this is from the emails, so I don't think I'm gonna be able to do
Okay,
it. It's,
What you did.
no, you changed it, that you just click one of that one, yeah. There, okay, now you can see the entire building,
Oh, yeah.
what it looks like, and it's that was what I was just,
Yeah,
we can
so
put people
that's
back.
wetland. That's
But-
not
but-
wetland.
But what, and Dan is, I think, saying, and you can sort of see it, we all know how Linden Street goes into was it Uric, and so there's a lot of elevation, but you start going up as you head towards Murphy Road and High Rock Street. So I think the idea was that we could get lower to be considered to our Maples Avenue people on the left side of the phase 2 building and only go to 3 stories there, but we could add a story on the other side, and the trees, they're
Right.
huge mature trees that will be providing a lot of screening there.
Hmm.
And I should also say, this is not the first time. Dan's team has produced a dozen different variants. And we've, over these 7 meetings, and we've sort of been iterating and giving feedback, not just the 3 of us, but also Margaret and Natalie have been adding their experience from doing things for the Cambridge Housing Authority. So there's a big kind of a group brainstorming session. And this, is something that kind of looks and feels like the best approach. Dan did a maximum capacity, how much could you stuff onto there? And I think we got it a little over 300, but the feeling is for Needham, that would be just too big and too much. But that something like this that still would be larger buildings, but if you look at, you can't see the school in this one. Maybe we'll make another slide where it looks at aerial view looking towards the school. But our buildings are then sort of consistent in size with the school buildings and sort of framing this quad that has the fields in there. And the feeling is that when he starts layering in the actual design as opposed to do fix, it'll really look like a campus kind of, college campus kind of approach to things there.
Another question,
Hmm.
the rendering doesn't show any telephone poles or wires, or are you gonna bury all the wires and not have any?
So we would, these are the questions that we would then work with our civil engineer. The utilities from electrical will be coming underground. The cables, it depends on what is under the street. And typically, if there's a manhole, we would have that to the new development. This also, in addition to the wiring, it's also sort of the flooding and where the catch basins are, how do we address this? And what we told the butters is that by law, we have to maintain all the runoffs of this redevelopment on site with a storm water management system. So we will have that as part of the civil engineering scope, which will also be included in the cost of this project.
And are you going to have solar panels on any of these roofs?
And so that's a fair question. And normally we typically would look at any renewable energy. Our first job is to reduce the energy costs. So how do we eliminate sort of excessive energy? And then when we achieve that through energy efficiency of these highly efficient and insulated walls, the windows are used, whether it's double panes or even triple panes, highly efficient energy heating and cooling systems and air source heat pumps, for example. The goal here is to eliminate fossil fuel use by using all electrification. And then at that point, then we would look at how do you offset the energy being used with the state has been doing is what's called solar panel ready, so that these roofs would be designed to be able to take the solar panel loads and often the other municipalities have worked with third-party vendors to actually provide the solar panels. Then that ties into the inverters, and we would have infrastructure and rooms in our mechanical space to allocate or to have space for the inverters in the future.
But you wouldn't be putting the panels as part of the construction?
And that, I think we work both ways financially, whether it's something that's worked out with a third-party vendor, or that the town buys the equipment and gets installed on day one. Another option that we're looking at with our mechanical engineer is a geothermal system, in that rather than, it's essentially a deep well. There's many of these holes that are drilled down to take advantage of the temperature, the constant temperature on the ground. These wells are quite deep. And so we completed a geotech report. We have a draft report that was received last week as part of our investigation. So that was part of to understand the groundwater, how high they are, what's the soil conditions and so on, whether it's suitable for a geotech a geothermal heating and cooling system.
I'm just looking at all the open, you don't have trees or anything over all that roofing. So that it's a perfect setup for solar panels.
Yeah, and the orientation is such that I think it on the south side
Yeah.
that faces the Maple Avenues neighborhood, those would all could be potentially.
I have a
or-
question.
Yes,
Go ahead, Janice.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any type of ventilation or any type of air conditioning stacks or, where is all that gonna be? Or is this just like a promo and,
sorry, and so the mechanical system are located in this case will be either on the ground or on the roof in these attic systems with ventilation. So we have yet to sort of carve out areas to put all the bedrooms will be mechanically ventilated through a mechanical ventilation system, what's called makeup air. And then, and that was handled through what's called a energy recovery ventilator. So all the exhaust on the bathrooms and then will be essentially captured and then with an energy wheel, then taking the heat or the cold air back into the units and mixing in with incoming air. So it's a very efficient system for the ventilation. The heating and cooling system is a electrified, most likely air or heat pump system, something that you see at the Mitsubishis, for example, that you see around. So those type of system will provide, they're extremely efficient in that they can essentially take the one side of the heat of the building and taking it to a certain side of the building that requires cooling, and so minimizing the compressor usage. And this is simply by doing using the refrigerants back and forth. And the equipment themselves will be sort of located either on the roof or on the ground.
but not shown here?
They're not, and you're right, and we will be showing them.
Okay, so I'm just mentioning, a lot of residents are very concerned about the ventilation in the units right now. So if we're going forward with all of the redevelopment, it'd be nice to assure them that they're gonna have good ventilation, or much better ventilation, I should say. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ed, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I had one question, but it was answered.
Hmm. Great, good. So let's go to resident comment. I think this is a good interesting way of starting our resident comment section of the agenda here on something totally new. Go ahead.
Say my name,
Yes, please.
David Schubo, resident of Chambers, 28 Chambers.
And speak up, because remember, we've got this speakerphone
Who
here.
asked to ask, there are couples at the, are there not big enough space for beds in the room?
Or
Or like a big full-size bed?
yes,
And,
absolutely.
I was wondering, are we able to change locations if we live over there and go to, What's the exact location? I can't see Maple Street on there. Well, that's Maple Street.
Yeah.
Are we able to, if we live anywhere, it doesn't matter where we live, and it's accordance to where we're gonna be? As if we live Linden or we live at Chambers?
So you're saying
Is
who?
Chambers gonna get all put over there, or are they, some of them? are
No, what'll happen is that if you go to the phase 1, phase 2 slide there. Yeah, go back, just the first, second slide or something like that. So what we're envisioning, that one, yeah, no, that one right there. What we're envisioning is that we would build the phase 1 building first, and those are the 28 units, 32 units. The 20, it's 32 years, 8 buildings that are on the other side of the parking lot that way, okay? And those residents would then move back in to the new units and the phase 1 building. And then we would then have room, because it would have 75 new 1-bedroom apartments in there. We'd have room to move the people who are in the remaining 40 units that are on this side, ending right here on Lynn Street, and move those people into the phase 1A building, and then build the phase 1B building. And so then we have enough room so that we can do our own in-house tenant relocation once we get
Right,
through that
so there'll be
first phase 1.
some residents who won't have to move temporarily anywhere.
No, they will,
Yeah, that's-
after
right.
phase 1,
Yeah.
everybody will be able to move into a new unit right here. And then, if your question is, which side of the building, this side or that side of the building and so forth, we haven't thought that
I'll have
through.
the choice to stay over here.
You would, I would think so, but it hasn't been thought through.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Have you ever heard of fiber optic wires or Comcast or Verizon wires, and does any of that change in relation to what we're using now for internet or cable?
Dan, do you want to comment on that, or I can comment?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with what is.
We have both, coax, and fiber optic in this town, and I suspect everything will be fiber optic. That's the more modern technology.
Yeah.
And that would be not only for, cable TV service, but also Verizon Fios is what it would be in this town. And that would also be for internet as well. Ross, any questions or comments?
Yeah, I do a couple of things just briefly. Yeah, my name is Ross Donald and I live at Chambers Street, 25 Chambers Street. And I guess I've got 2 areas of questioning. The first one would be the pandemic response, and the second would be the neighborhood context. And I guess my question is, what is your have you instituted any kind of changes in your thinking about your approach to architecture and providing space for people as a result of the pandemic and COVID issues? And the idea being that we've got an opportunity for open space, and High Rock School, more of the students are outside as a result of it, because they didn't want to keep them inside. Felt that was a little bit less healthy. So I'm interested in what you have to say about that, especially because we've got some opportunities with wetlands, vernal pools. If that open space is healthy and beneficial, then
So
what do you
Dan,
think
why don't you
about that?
address the open space of the exterior, how we're going to take advantage of the site that way? And has the pandemic influenced the way you architect buildings like this?
I mean, I think the very first thing is ventilation is on the interior of the building. So today you don't have makeup air that's coming into your unit. What you have is a door undercut. And so the very first thing is the ventilation exhaust system are mechanical in all the modern buildings, and we've done this over many developments or redevelopments, and those works to advantage. And these are all through MERV 13 filters that are sort of captures, and essentially it's a much better effective ventilation and exhaust for the interior of the units. On the outside, the whole goal of these courtyards, they're not small courtyards relative to the size of the buildings, to that we can program, or at least and try to whether through landscape, whether through paving, whether through trees, is to enhance that relationship between the people who live indoors and then their access to the outside. Now, you also have that, as you mentioned, the wetland, the vernal pools, and then the path. And so our hope is to work with our landscape architect is to enhance that relationship behind the building, if you will, and then connecting the two building or the three buildings in this overall master plan. And what we've been sort of in discussion also is the ability of communal space, whether it's commercial kitchens and social services on this campus that really enhance the quality of life of the seniors who lives here. One last thing I will mention is that with regard to COVID, what we have been doing is really trying to really effectively move or rather sort of design the building in such a way that it allows a level of flexibility within the units themselves. So.
Great, you had one second question there, Ross, and then
Yeah.
we'll come back over to the table, but I want to go
Right
on.
into this,
Yeah, go ahead.
We've been focusing on the building. One of the things I've been hearing from a couple of people, and because there are other projects, the school has a master plan for High Rock and so forth. And people have been talking about the neighborhood context. I mean, and you've even phrased it, I believe, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I thought you were saying that one of the balancing acts that you were going through was, on the one hand, we want density, but on the other hand, we want to acknowledge the neighborhood context, which might not. I mean, you look around, there's split level ranches and small colonials. There's not 3.5 story buildings. So, and what opportunities do you see? How would you do this? I mean, it might be outside your contract boundaries to look at the neighborhood context, but is there a way to do that? How are you going to address building a new building that might be different and new with the neighborhood context, whatever that is?
So Dan, do you want to address that briefly, and then I'll chime in as well?
Sure. I think the first step that we're trying to do here as the investigation phase in the last 2-3 months is that we've engaged and as part of our team, we have a traffic engineer that is looking at the peak hours that are the traffic impacts of this level of density. And the other we already kind of touched on is the storm water, the civil, the sewer. And then as well as sort of life safety, these buildings will be sprinklered as part of the new building development. We've also looked at landscape and wetland. We have redefined, or rather we've updated the wetland flags with our wetland team currently, so we know where those no disturb zones are. And lastly, we have we're working with our landscape architect. We have an arborist that has completed a tree survey of species and the caliper size within the 100 feet buffer zone of this wetland currently. So all of this information is being collated and collected to sort of answer that bigger question that you're asking about how do you sort of put in a 3-story, 3.5 story building into this neighborhood. The architectural response could potentially be more subtle in terms of whether it's a pitched roofs versus flat roofs. You'll notice out on the 4-story, partial 4-story building, we sort of have a flat roof there, and potentially that could be a roof deck that on the partial 4 stories, since the elevator will go up and the stairs will go up, that you may have that opportunity to sort of take advantage of some of these elements. So there are also ways where we, these pitched roofs, if you will, on the 3rd floor one on phase 2, you'll see that we drop the gables down much lower and then make up the height with a shed dormer, which is, this image is a little too small, but you'll see that if you zoom in, you will be able to see these are some of the techniques that we would try to use to bring sort of the scale to match into the neighborhood.
And I will chime in, but before I do, Steve, I'd like to request that anybody who's hybrid raise their hand as in the attendee list so that we can go to the people who are attending online, see if there are any questions from those participants here. So the other answer, having done this once before in another community in Massachusetts, you know, is everything Dan says has to be done by a very competent professional team. The other thing we do is we got to ask everybody. We have now had 6 public meetings about this project, just to say we're starting up until now. And in some of those public meetings, and I'm, by the way, this is with Needham boards and commissions, it's with our residents and Linden Street residents, it's with the neighbors in this area. And without naming names, some of the meetings, they say we want more density. We don't do 300 instead of 250. And then to others of the meetings, they say, no, let's do less density, you know. So as soon as we finish here tonight, and I just want to emphasize everybody is we are all seeing this for the first time today, myself included, okay? We will be going back and having another 6 meetings, and we do it probably a third set of 6 meetings. So it's sort of an iterative process of kind of arriving at a community consensus as to what is the right approach, so that what we do is beautiful and fits into the neighborhood and, you know, enhances everybody's property values on one hand, but also is economical to build and operate and addresses one of the fundamental problems, which is we have 1,000 people on the waiting list, literally right now for this particular development, and the need is great. So yes, Patty.
Is it just dawning on me that the Z-shaped building is taking the place of the chambers?
Yes,
That's correct.
So they're all gone.
Yes,
yes,
in this development. And we also have a.
not right away, but at the phase 2.
But there's also a scenario where we are looking at modernizing the chambers building and simply as a piece of, or a due diligence to see what that would mean. But we know that to achieve the 250 unit density, at least as a goal, the current 2-story building is not going to do it. You're going to have to add elevator core to that. You're going to have to extend the building to right size the units and add an additional 1 floor above those units to make that sort of feasible. But we would have that included in our feasibility study so that there's a cost comparison. What would it cost to do that approach versus the complete new Z building that you see here?
And I'll
I
come back
have
to you.
another
but-
question, please.
Yeah, go ahead, Janice.
Okay, as we all know, that's a elderly and disabled development, and this has been a problem, ongoing problem. I can't, where is the parking, and why do those type of, my type of people have that parking issue where they have to carry bundles so far of the units? I mean, can that be configured in where that doesn't have to happen? Right now, I'm looking at this, I don't see any parking.
So go back to the first slide, second slide there, Steve. And Dan, if you could sort of.
Because I didn't see these slides in the beginning. They put them up in the
Right
middle.
there. Right here.
Yeah, so the parking, there's 66 parking spaces between where you see the 2 yellow buildings currently on the
Right,
plan.
I
And
see
then-
it.
And then there's 83 parking spaces on the left-hand side between that phase 2 and phase 1B building. And so these are all sort of on-surface parking spaces. And then in our current plan for phase 2, if we can go a couple slides down to the first floor of phase 2, we're also potentially looking at sort of indoor parking, if you will. One more slide. On the left-hand side, you see that on this gray area, that's also, at least that was presented today as a parking sort of area that's inside, under the building, if you will. So, and there's probably about 20-25 parking spaces in that location. The reason I didn't quite mention that is because the first floor on that phase 2 are still in flux in terms of should those gray areas be more units? Can they be sort of other amenities or some other function? And And so that's the current sort of parking situation.
And if you can go back to that earlier slide, Steve, I mean, I would say in fairness, every single brainstorming meeting of the 7 or 6 of the 7, parking comes up and the question is, how do you make the distance from where you park to coming into the building as close as possible? And the second question that goes in that every single time, and Cheryl's smiling at me because it's how do you locate the elevators? First of all, it's great to have elevators. And first of all, we want to have 2 elevators. So if one of them goes down, the other one is still working, then how do you locate the elevators to minimize, so, the distance? Have an equidistant. Some people inevitably are going to be closer than others, but to not have, it be such that some apartments are way more far to walk to down the halls than the other ones are. So, Janice, if you don't mind, I'd like to see if we have anybody online who has their hand up.
Good,
here.
I'm done.
Okay, great. We don't. Great.
I'm gonna add something, I think.
Yeah, go ahead,
Where
Penny.
where we live, if we have a lot of bundles, we can go in the front door and take the elevator
Right.
with a cart
Mhm.
and then go and park our car
Right.
wherever,
Yep.
far away. So if there's a place to pull up in front of a main entrance, I would think that would. be-
So in 1A and 1B, if I may jump in here, because I'm going to try to wrap up this up. I mean, a lot of these are being taken into consideration, but there'll be a U-shaped pull in, pull off, park for 10 minutes
Yeah,
thing area where you could do that. And there'd also in between 1A and 1B, there'd be side entrances that you could walk into the building. So you don't have to walk all the way around to the front to get in. So those are being, this is the 1,000 pieces of the jigsaw puzzle that need to be put together here. So I want to close this out, if I may, by just saying, again, the purpose of doing this is to also just alert the board and the residents who've been with us and very closely involved that we are going out in public with this starting next week. And doing our next round of 6 meetings with everybody to kind of again, listening to her, getting input, seeing if people have good ideas that we can incorporate, see what the problems and issues are, and so forth. So just wanted to make sure that everybody here on the board and our residents who attend board meetings, get the first sneak preview here. Probably one of the very first things we'll be doing another couple weeks, 3 weeks, is to have a second resident meeting here at Linden Chambers. We had about 20 people. We pretty much mostly filled up this room last time around. And I'm betting we don't have more attendant next time here, so.
We had 2 meetings.
And we did have 2 meetings, that's right. Each time filling them in. Okay, Dan, thank you very much.
Great
Keep
job.
up the
Thank
work,
you.
good work.
Yeah.
And
Thank you, Dan.
we'll let you get to some dinner here, and we'll come back to our regular agenda here. So, which is resident input. Do we have any other resident input? Going once, gentlemen, we're back to the regular agenda, so any other resident input that, isn't involved with us here?
You want resident input?
We're back to the beginning of the agenda, the regular agenda.
Non-housing stuff.
Yeah, well, conceptual design things, yes.
I don't have any, I didn't bring anything with me.
Okay,
Yeah, I have.
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any hands up online for resident input here?
That's all. I have to deal with part of the cost.
Okay, hi, Greg.
You're on mute. All right, so we're going to
Okay,
start.
I have something.
Okay.
President. Yeah, just briefly, I won't go into detail. These are the topics that I've been communicating with our new executive director. So we hope to get some policies and practices put into place on landscaping and property maintenance. So that we can acknowledge that there would be individual gardens, memorial gardens, as well as wildflower gardens, that sort of thing. Naturalizing the built environment, I think, is the theme. Secondly, opening up 164 Linden Street as a community design center or some other function that serves the residents. Three, organizing a local tenants organization, which we've been trying to do for some time. Like to get that going. Like to get the up-to-date grievance procedures. And a lot of this information should be here on the bulletin boards, so that the residents can get at it. And then 5, the formation of a surety group that would basically I think the phrase is stand surety, like the way godparents do for the happy couple, the newly married couple can't, pay for the education of their children, the godparents would step in. Well, I see a surety group stepping in for when the housing authority either can't or doesn't want to, or doesn't feel they need to do things, whereas the residents might be able to be served by a surety group to actually get some things done that they'd like to see. But it would be in support of the housing authority. This is something that serves as a backstop when the crew is too busy or there are other things that need to be done. So that's it.
Thanks so much. And any comment from you, Cheryl, or shall we move on?
Thank you for your comments, Russ.
All right. So we are on agenda item B now, review and approval of board minutes. We have, thanks to our super duper minute taker, 3 sets of board minutes to approve. One is the special meeting we had to approve the decision to go forward with repositioning the offsite. And then last month's regular board meeting and last month's special board meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
I move to approve all 3.
All 3 minutes from, yes, we can try to do it efficiently. And do I have a second to approve all 3 minutes? And does any of the commissioners have any edits to or corrections or anything else, tweaks that are needed here? Hearing none, I will have a roll call vote, as we must continue to do as a result of being a hybrid meeting. Reg Foster votes aye. Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Clerk votes aye.
And Janice Bennett is on
Janice, you're on
mute. Well,
Janice Bennett votes aye, sorry.
okay, so we'll take that and write that up as an approval of all 3 minutes here and save us 5 minutes of voting here. Where oh, yeah. I skipped over A, so thank you very much to Steve here. So we now will do the review and approval of the bill schedule and check warrants. We have the NHA bill schedule and check warrant for $541,286.77. Do I hear a motion?
I couldn't find it.
It should be on page.
Oh, I see it there.
Yeah. 4, no, 5, yeah,
Okay.
5 to 8. So do I have a motion to approve that?
I saw move.
Okay, Janice, second by Penny. Any comments or questions for the executive director? Hearing none, we will proceed to, I think we do need to do 2 roll call votes here. So to approve the NHA bill schedule and check warrant, Reg Foster votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Clerk votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
And it passes 4-0. And then may I have a motion to approve the HRH LLC bill schedule and check warrant.
So move.
And a move by Janice. Seconded by Penny.
And I have a question.
Any questions? Go ahead, Ed.
What page is the HRA?
That should be starting page 9, according to the index.
I don't see the 61,407 number.
I think there was a mix-up in the contents. I
All
don't know.
right, page 10, I see the number, okay.
Yeah, I think it's in there and there's no total on this, which is the list of the checks there. Their subtotal, whatever. Any questions on the payments, though?
No,
Okay, hearing no further comments or questions, I will call the roll. Reg Foster votes aye.
Ed Geiger votes aye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
And it passes 4-0. Okay, we are on agenda item number C, which is a change order from Larissa Electrical. What's going on here, Cheryl?
So these are the intercom panels at Chamber Street. And I've asked Nada and Greg to stand by, should you have any questions about this. This was a contract that you all approved from the architect Frank, I'm sorry, from the architect Frank Sittum for the intercom panel replacement project at Chamber Street. And the issue that we're having is that there may have been a building or two buildings that were not included in the original bid. And those buildings need, am I saying that correctly, Nada? Can you,
Building 15 and 17.
you're on mute.
So
Yeah.
essentially what happened when they did the request, they only included building 15, 17, 40, 42. They did not include building 28 and 30. Once the process began, that's when we realized there was an issue with the intercom system in building 28 and 30. So they put in a change request because they do have to include that building and change the intercom system in the outside of the building and in the inside, where the residents are able to punch a button to let people in and out.
I'm looking at this change order. It says add buildings 15 and 17 to the contract.
Right, I'm sorry, it's 15 and 17, correct.
Is that for doorbells or emergencies?
That's the doorbells to the building for the residents.
Oh, it's not like the pull chains if you're in a
No,
panic. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, that's pretty important. How'd that get overlooked?
66%.
Well, you're adding 2 new buildings.
So I do have a call into the RCAT to find out why the significant increase in the change order. And I'm just waiting on a call back from him. I called him 3 times today. But I can certainly send out that information once I get it in terms of why the significant change. Nada and Greg and I talked about this earlier. I know Greg is on mute, but they explained that the original issue was that those 2 buildings were not included in the initial bid. That's a suspect. They suspect that the 2 buildings were not included. They're the oldest ones and they need to be done. So I'm just waiting to get clarification from Frank Sittum on this project.
Did they say why? Does it, that since they're the oldest ones, did they need new wiring? Was there a reason given that they didn't receive that?
Well, I didn't talk directly to the RCAT. but Greg had given me a great example and he's on mute, so I can't have him chime in on what's going on. Steve may know more because he was around when this contract was initially presented to the board in the fall, right? I don't know if you want to
I
chime
will,
in.
I will, it's your invitation, yeah. So it was found that these two buildings were left off the original contract. But in doing the other buildings, they found that the units were in dire need of replacement. And it would be basically irresponsible not to do them, because they could be in failure. This money is through our state 5-year funding. It doesn't come out of our reserve or anything. That's why the RCAT has approved the change order and sent it on to the board to approve. Sorry, I'm looking at the.
Yeah.
Well, the other contract is an increase of 99%, like they never mentioned it before, and that's brand new. Is that right?
It's a significant increase. This.
Everything's gone up.
Well, yeah, but it's as if that was never, it's not as if it's a change. If it's 99%, it's.
This one is.
Is it
Like they didn't-
worth doing with the redevelopment coming? Should we take that into account? I don't know.
Can I just say
The-
something?
Can I answer that question? Yes, because it's, the
Safety issue.
phase 2 buildings are like 5 years away or 4 years away, so this is a safety thing, obviously, and
Thank you for saying that, Rich, because if you didn't, I was going to.
right, yeah, so.
Okay.
So let me ask, this question, let me, tell you, everybody, something I'm gonna say later on. On agenda item F, it turns out that 3 of the 5 agenda items are not fully baked enough for the board meeting tonight. And so I'm going to ask if the board would be okay if we scheduled a special board meeting on those items. That's item number F2. You want to mark it in your agenda, F3 and F5. We'll still do the other ones. And we had hoped to have it all come together tonight, but it just didn't make it the cut, and you didn't get the materials in advance, as you know. So there is an opportunity, if you know, to schedule a special board meeting next week, because we do need to go over these things. And you could get more explanation as to why the costs have gone up so much.
Okay.
And I think nobody said it, but I think the board member question would be, did they underbid it before and now they're trying to smuggle their lower bid costs into, this greater thing? Or is there a more logical explanation, that, we don't necessarily have to assume that something wrong is going on, but we just don't know.
Right, we just don't know,
Yeah.
and I'm sure I'll get more specific information from the RCAT
Yeah.
by the time we have our special meeting.
And would that be okay? They didn't start the work, right? Everybody's still got the old systems, or how's it?
Right, Nada, they're pending, this change order is pending board approval, is that?
But what I'm saying is they're not halfway into the project right now, are they, or are they?
Well, they're working on, go ahead, Nada.
I'm sorry, they have started the project. Again, the ones that they're requesting are the units the buildings that were not done. And some of the change order also includes, there's 5 buildings. 3 of those buildings have the same intercom system. 2 of those buildings have the oldest intercom systems that exist.
So I can
It
see
is a
many,
problem because we have tenants there that their doorbells do not ring.
That's not good.
So they
Yeah.
cannot let anybody in.
No staff, no nursing, nothing. That's not good. Not good.
so I guess there's an urgency to this.
There's an urgency. Can you text Greg and ask him to unmute himself?
Yeah,
And perhaps he could chime in. He had some good points that he made earlier when we were talking about it. But.
And Steve can send him a message
Yeah.
to ask to unmute if you click on Greg's name right there. Yeah,
There it is.
Okay. Greg, you gotta unmute.
Unmute yourself.
You're still muted.
It's still muted, right?
Still muted.
Probably
That's-
sleeping.
No, it's
No.
there. Yeah. Just one of the concerns that was raised earlier when I was involved in this was that the lead time on ordering the equipment because of the supply chain issues.
Is another issue.
Long term, so it's, the approval tonight, we just put that on the calendar.
Can't you unmute him from?
So he's, you know, you can ask to unmute him, but you can't, yeah.
Why don't we just vote on it?
Well, I just,
Okay. I don't have any issue with the dollars or in fact that we're adding them, but I would question.
Yeah.
How thorough were these people that they omitted all of this extra work when, on the initial investigation? That's a little disappointing.
So, another way we can go is we can approve this subject to receiving, you know,
Explanation.
explanation. That there is a reasonable reason for this much additional cost. And that then, you know, we're not micromanaging, the executive team here. And, is that a better way to go? Given that some tenants don't have doorbell function, and I think that gets it into an urgent.
I'm in total agreement that we need to
Yeah.
do this. My concern is that they missed so much
And
in their initial investigation.
and
makes
would you
me
be,
wonder.
yeah,
right, the
It does.
original bid was, I believe, 14K. It was a
It's not the
small
dollars.
amount. So
It's
it
not the
this almost doubles that original
Yeah.
bid.
It's not the dollars, it's the fact that 2 buildings were left out that needed to be done, and
Yeah.
in fact, 5 buildings on work order 2.
so, I,
I don't know what to
Well,
do
we
about it.
put
let's
that
do
up
a-
later and go for what we need right now, so.
Well, we're going to-
if there are actually tenants without doorbells, we can sort that out
I-
post facto, so I'm
I'm not
gonna sug-
disagreeing with
No, no.
doing it.
I know you aren't, so I'm suggesting that I will make a motion that we approve this change order. With the expectation that we will receive, there will be more investigation on the part of the executive director and NADA. And we'll receive a written explanation in the email as to why
Fair enough.
they, you know, fouled up, if that's what happened, or somehow the costs went up so much.
Is that the motion?
That's the motion. Second,
I
is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Reg Foster votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny for both sides.
Janice Bennett both sides.
Okay, onward.
Could I ask a question?
Hmm?
Sorry, this has been omitted. I had a question on page 21, not realizing that's part of the minutes.
Okay,
Page 21 and page 22. On page 21, number 7. This first sentence says, Mr. Mayor. The contract with the financial of the board chair, period. The board chair do what?
Okay, I'm
Accept
sorry,
it,
Commissioner.
or-
it would have said the board requiring that the board chair execute the contract, if I remember that, yeah.
Yeah.
I just couldn't
I
figure out.
will make that, and I'll note the minutes as, approved as amended.
Okay, and then on page 22, number 13. I know that we approved this $2 increase, but it's $2 an hour, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that needs to be.
What did I do here?
Just the units are missing
Okay,
in item 13 on
13,
page 22
okay.
there, yeah.
thank you.
Yeah,
All right, so I think I heard the motion was to approve those minutes subject to those 2 changes.
Okay.
second,
That's- Yeah, no, I'm not making another motion. I'm just
Oh,
saying,
okay.
I think I heard it in the first place here. And without objection, we will move to the executive director's report. And that will be you, so let me turn the floor over to you, Cheryl.
Okay, folks, bear with me. So the first item is the monthly financial report from our fee accountants. And if you have any questions on that. They do a great job of making sure that accounts are in order. And if there are no questions, I'm going to move on to the monthly management report. Which again is really not much to report. You see this every month. Nada and her team,
I have a question on page
Yep.
53.
53. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Just, all right, up on the top one, Captain Robert Cook Drive. The tenant rent and the balance. Those two numbers combined are what is billed.
Sorry. Top, Captain Robert Cook Drive.
Are
Okay,
you looking at the 2001
Yeah, 2747 and 7212.
and you're asking if those two numbers are what is been billed to the residents?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
Nada, is that correct? I'm saying yes. You're shaking your head.
So where it says tenant rent, that is the monthly charges.
yes, that was the question. Thank you.
Um,
Okay,
But-
so then a follow-up question. The 90 days past due of $2,148.
mhm.
Is that because the tenants are gone and it's not collectible, or has it gone to collection, or? How do
We're
we?
in the
handle-
court process,
In the what process?
court process.
Okay. So is that an eviction process or a collection process?
Hopefully an agreement for them to repay the balance. They're still current tenants. These are all
Okay.
current tenants.
It's one and the
Thank you.
same, Ed.
And is that true of the High Rock Estates one for $1,621?
Correct.
And the Seabed's Way one for $1,789?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
I move to accept the report.
No, we don't vote on reports, I don't think. No.
Yeah,
No,
but
I
we
was
will
just waiting,
vote,
waiting,
hopefully.
Cheryl to get her rhythm here. This is
I
the
know,
first time
I
go
know,
through
I
here.
know,
So we,
something.
so we're now on
Public
D3.
Participation at board meeting policy. And so this has been, but I think this is the fourth time this has come back. There were some questions and corrections that were made at the March meeting, and those corrections were implemented in this policy. One of them was just sort of grammatical sort of questions, nothing substantive. But I know you had a chance to read it, and hopefully tonight you would be ready to vote on the policy.
I had one question.
Yes.
Under public comment period, we talked about possibly giving 5 minutes rather than 3 minutes to whoever wanted to speak. This would be page 55.
Well, I know it actually was 10 and I changed it to 3. And I think that 3 is a reasonable sort of goal to reach. We are not going to hold them to the letter to 3 minutes, but to hold to the
That would be
letter
the
to
goal.
3 or 5 can be quite lengthy, I think.
So in practice, I agree with what Cheryl just said. I think the 3 minute is what we've been using for some time with success, but what you do, and maybe we can add this, is the chair has the discretion to, extend the time for a resident or a member of the public to complete their talking or to be able to, if there is something more substantial immediately being talked about. So you can say, you can add a I had a couple, three tweaks like that one, and that was one of them that, which is, you can add to that first paragraph, the chair in his or her discretion may grant additional time to the individual.
And then you'll bring
And-
down the hammer.
Yeah, well, hopefully we haven't gotten that far. We don't have,
I've seen
we've
it
had,
before, Reg.
yeah, and so, and then on that very same paragraph, I would say 3 minutes per person for public statements. I mean, that's what it means. But just to be crystal clear here, it's not 3 minutes for all members of the public area, right? Speaking, bringing down the hammer here, so. Do you have any other questions or comments? Anybody? I have a couple more tweaks,
Okay,
but I think we're there. The second paragraph, it says, it starts off by saying you should inform the chair in advance. And then the second sentence says, it says it's not required, but it'd be helpful. So I would, shoulds are, to me, shoulds are and shalls are sort of the same thing, so I would say are strongly requested to inform the chair in advance, or even just requested. Again, we're not a big public housing authority here, so. Go
I
ahead,
think I would
Janet.
like to add something to that, Reg.
Sure,
Cheryl.
yeah,
Something to the effect where you want them to submit their questions or concerns prior to, and giving those people preference. I think you should give preference to the people that actually show up at the meeting first.
You currently do that, don't you?
well,
Because if you show up, you should be heard first. I don't, it's just a courtesy.
Already do
well,
that.
I'm of the mindset to say that if someone has taken the time out to write a well thought out comment, that we give that person consideration.
Well, somebody that shows up deserves more consideration. I don't
I
know.
think, yeah. But
Okay,
their
well, but
comments may not be prepared.
but this is just speaking, by the way,
Yes.
if somebody submits a letter but isn't here, then we'll probably hand out the letter or put it in the
Well, if
board.
they have
packet or-
a certain specific reason why they can't be there, that's
Mhm.
one thing, but if they're just like, I don't think I'll show up, I'll just write this letter. As opposed to somebody that shows up with something that is, rather passionate or that has to be heard upon.
Well, I think that'll happen automatically, because if they don't show up, they're not gonna be recognized, and that it applies to hybrid, attending on a hybrid basis. So then it becomes the board's, individual board commissioners' decision as to whether they want to discuss this written comment that we've received. But this all addresses speaking from the floor, speaking from the hybrid meeting on a virtual basis here.
And I think my thought also is that, there's a specific issue that they like to bring up. And so they've taken the time to write that out and present it to the board.
Mhm.
And I feel that that should be acknowledged, whether it's read out loud or what have you.
But it's, again, you talk
First.
about it as being those who communicated in advance their desire to speak.
That's correct.
This isn't people who haven't attended. and just to send in a letter here, so.
Yeah,
And it will be something that's conducive to the community as a whole instead of a personal issue.
Yeah.
Right,
Well, then that should be covered at the end where you have to be bringing, it covered 2 or 3 different ways. It
Right.
shouldn't be, gee, I'm mad because my plumbing wasn't fixed in my kitchen sink. It, you know, it shouldn't be that kind of thing.
yeah,
You should have called maintenance about that. You know, the board isn't the first place you come.
that's correct.
It might be a place you come if you call maintenance 25 times and it hasn't been fixed, but I, you know, that's not happening. You know, that's hypothetical. That isn't realistic. I would be comfortable, just changing that should to our requested to.
Okay,
And Janice, I think the wording of this accommodates what you say,
mhm,
which is if somebody isn't here, they're not going to get priority. And if somebody is here,
okay,
then they're gonna, you know, get priority. Just the way we do it right now. My third comment is the next paragraph or one sentence there. It says to facilitate timely completion of the business of the meeting, public comment will not be allowed under other portions of the meeting. I happen to know that is not, you can't always do that because I've been in that many times.
Mhm.
It has to be other portions of the meeting, comma, unless required by the applicable state or federal regulation. Because there's some things that can come up, where if you read, I forget which one it is, 760, CMR 7060,
mhm,
6.04, 5, 6, 8, or 11. I forget which one it's in, but it says, you know, certain topics, you know, the residents get to comment on.
right, I just want to say one thing. I didn't understand what you guys are saying. If you wrote your resident comment and showed up, yes, you should get first preference over somebody that just showed up. I agree with that. I was just talking about people that wrote a resident comment and didn't show up, as opposed to the people that did show up.
Yeah, I
Those
think we
people that-
understood that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, and my last one is next page, number 6. In any topic, comments, complaints should have been discussed with the ED or the AED. And I think it says in advance, is sort of missing at the end of that
I see.
sentence, but I'm not sure the 100% you can really do that. So I would say ideally, comma, any topic, comments or complaints should have been discussed with the AED, AED. Do you want to have it that specific, or do you mean, or other office staff
No,
in advance? Just
Yeah.
those 2 people.
Mhm.
Okay, just asking. Okay,
this is great.
but those are my only comments. I think
Okay.
we taken extra time for this,
Yeah,
but
interesting.
we've come up with a good result, in my opinion here. So,
Great, I will include these changes.
okay, so do I hear a motion to approve
I
This
move that
policy.
we approve this public comment period with the notation, with the changes noted.
the public participation policy of the Needham Housing Authority within the note changes as noted?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Kirk. Is there any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Reg Foster votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Yep. And also, I guess I want to say one thing, right after my first meeting with Cheryl, after she was appointed to the august responsibility of executive director. You said something along the line of, you really believe in keeping policies up to date. And I just wanted to bring that out. So this, once she kind of gets, you know, things sort of came down a bit from starting up here. I think we'll start to see some. Look at, is that a fair?
It's,
I just thought that was worth doing, yeah.
it's a fair.
And I
comment, yeah.
actually said that's the way I felt for the last 10 years
Yeah.
too.
It'll be a
Yeah,
standard
amen to
next
that,
year.
right?
A little
So,
decorum.
okay. Okay, all right,
I did.
number 4, D4, approval of ARPA grant. Is that where we are? Yes, we are. Okay,
I have a
So,
question
yeah,
On that contract, I don't see, it doesn't really say what we are going to use
Right.
these funds for. Is it
right.
just
So
open?
this came up at the last meeting, this item. And it wasn't clear, as to whether or not, we were approving an amendment or, what we were, approving. It appears that it's a capital fund grant for 372 that is out of a pot of money that it gets allocated across the state to various housing authorities. And this is our figure, 372,075. This is my thinking. I would love to get confirmation on this, and I do have a call in to Frank Sidham on this as well, just as a general.
Right.
Okay, and Dan Bonzi as well, but I believe that this is what that grant is, and we didn't vote on it at the last meeting. It wasn't, just wanted some more clarity on that. But I'm,
Well, it just doesn't look as if there are any particular restrictions or anything. It's just,
right.
we got the money and we can do
Right.
whatever we want.
Well, Steve sort of disagrees with that mindset. I mean, to me, I kind of agree with Commissioner Kirk. And I went
I
through
thought,
this.
Cheryl, I thought that was a state funded grant for around $100,000.
No, it's for 372,075.
Yeah,
But the actual, is it a restricted grant? Is that what you're asking? Is it targeted?
Well, I just made the note, what use? It
What
doesn't
is use?
say
Yeah.
what we're supposed to be spending that money
Anything.
on.
Okay, yeah, and so, as Steve mentioned, that this comes out of the 5-year plan that was submitted. And this is our allocation, but again, I just want to get clarity on this. It sounds like you signed, it looks like you signed
I
it.
just cited, so
Mr.
because
Chair.
it was urgent, and let me understand, let me try another explanation here.
Mhm.
Which is, we know, of course, about the ARPA pot of money that the state distributed. And this is through some formula, our share of it, okay? I think we get to share, spend it on things that are already in our capital plan. We have a 5-year capital plan.
That's right.
This means that we would be able to do certain things that we were doing in the year 2025, 26, or 27, sooner is what it means. If we come up with something completely new that we want to spend it for, then there's a process for amending your 5-year capital plan, which does require the board oversight if that comes up. But the urgency of my signing this,
Mhm.
and then we didn't quite have the explanation last time around, is we didn't want that ARPA money to disappear on us.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, because that's a nice little chunk of change. And we've otherwise been fairly starved
Yeah.
for capital funds over the last.
can I get
20
a
years.
little clarification on the grant? Is it state or federal?
So that was the other thing I was going to mention. Thank you, Janice. That's right on point. And I was going to say, this is the state's ARPA money to be spent on the state's ARPA, state's projects here. And I do not believe that we could go in there and say, oh, well, now we've decided to fix the playground in Seabed and Cook. And
No.
yeah, well, that, we won't even talk about that kind of an example, but we can't use it for our state subsidized properties here. So, but if
You mean
anything,
federal? It's a state grant. You can't use
that's
it for
right,
federal.
we can't use it for federal subsidized.
And so
properties.
can we put it toward the funds for the capital improvement over there?
No, we can't, but what we can do is look at what we're doing, but it has to be.
We use
looked
it for
at
the
through
intercoms?
We can, but we've already got money for that, but we need to look at it through the lens that if we're actually gonna start in a couple years. Phase 1A, we want to try to make sure that we're not doing something that's just going to be torn down in a couple of years. So one of the reasons the PRI budget isn't where it needs to be completely is we're scrambling to try to put together a budget where all the things we have to spend on a pre-development basis in both the Linden Chambers project and the Seabed Cook project are funded. And there's certain gaps that we have in that funding, and we have certain pots of money. And some pots of money can be used for state, some pots of money can be used for federal, and small pots of money can be used for either. So we're working very hard with our Cambridge Housing Authority people to try to put that all together in a document that we can understand for the budget. So on this one, I think we need a board vote to retroactively make sure that I haven't stepped, gotten ahead of the board here, to approve the signature, approve the receipt of the, the receipt of these funds is subject to, their rules and requirements, retroactive to, the 8th of March 2023 here. So I'll make that motion since it's my own self-interest. We have a second from Penny.
Could you say that motion again, Reg?
Yes, I make a motion that we approve the approve the chairman to sign the ARPA contract for financial assistance for $372,000 and $372,075, subject to the rules and regulations of the program.
It doesn't say where it's going, though?
No,
That was.
it can be used for our, I have a second from Penny, so then we can have some more discussion. So as I understand it, it can be used for anything that is already in our 5-year capital plan. So, something that's in 2027 or 28, we could pull that, into the present,
It does go up to 2026.
and 2026, we can do that. And, or if we determine, we meaning the executive staff determines there's something new we want to do with that money that is for our state subsidized public housing that isn't in our 5-year plan, then they can propose an amendment of that 5-year plan, bring it back to the board, have the board approve that amendment, and then take that into DHCD and get them to.
So they can reallocate the funds as they see fit going forward, okay?
Not as they see fit, only subject to board approval and
So-
DHCD.
Oh,
approval.
exactly, of course.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions on this one? Call the roll. Reg Foster votes yes.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Kirk, aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Okay, we are now at, we're at 5, Director of Maintenance and Modernization position here on BD5 update.
So we had 3 candidates for
Rob.
this position.
Night, Russ.
1 in-house and 2 external candidates. The internal candidate was interviewed and one of the external candidates was interviewed. The 3rd candidate, I postponed the interviews. But the external candidate didn't quite have the skill set as advertised. He comes from a smaller agency and does not have a lot of experience supervising maintenance staff. He is the only maintenance staff, has been the only maintenance staff for 18 years at his housing authority, which is a small housing authority, and it's managed by a larger housing authority that does the capital programs for that agency. So very nice person, but doesn't bring a lot of benefit to the agency in terms of experience. So I have actually postponed this advertising for this position. I could do a couple of things. I can look internally and reorganize, which is what I'm planning to do. or I can put it out again and advertise for a greater or wider group of people. But the two candidates that we had externally did not bring the skill set to the table as advertised. So not sure if you have any questions about that.
Any comments or questions?
I do
Well,
wanna-
if you have some restructuring that you may want to look into, I wouldn't oppose putting it off, but I wouldn't put it off too long, Shovel. Because as you know, maintenance since Brian left has been, you know, yeah, as the resident commissioner, I take a lot of grief. And I can even just look out my own windows and doors. And, you know, the foliage is,
So I do want to say that, you know, we're still down unmanned. You know, we had a director of maintenance and facilities. We would have 5 people. We only have 4 staff, and they are doing a phenomenal job. We have a great staff of maintenance men who work really well with each other and are being supervised by Greg. And they're doing a great job. Everything that we've asked them to do, they are doing. NHA has been working very closely with them. The staff, maintenance, and our housing managers, including, as well as NHA, has completed inspections for the entire state program. NHA, are you on mute? I may ask you to chime in.
yeah, but Cheryl, these guys aren't actually able to climb up ladders and cut down tree branches.
I don't understand what your point is.
The overgrowth of the vegetation into the parking lots. Yeah, you don't have skilled maintenance men that can do that. They're in their 40s and they smoke cigarettes on the property.
So we are going to contract with an arborist to clean up some of the overgrown trees in the property. And we will certainly report on that. But currently, what the guys are doing are just phenomenal. I'm just so impressed with the staff. NHA, did you want to say anything about the inspections that were just completed?
Yes, we just completed all the state inspections, which the units were in pretty good shape. They weren't as rough as we thought they were gonna be. That's a lot of work orders that they're putting in, Janice. They're doing as much as they can. They have been hustling for months on end.
Because we've been,
I can't
yeah,
say-
I have to agree with you 100% totally.
Oh, wait,
because
let me finish.
we
I'm
have
so
been
sorry.
2 years. We've been 2 years, maybe 3 down in the maintenance. So
I just want to make one comment, and if you allow me, I'm sorry, probably I'm out of place, but I am gonna say this. I know you said Brian, you know, Mr. Strongman. The guys may smoke and they may be a little bit older, but they're really good, hardworking men.
So I'm gonna
gotta
jump
give
in
a
here
kudos
just
to
as a
them.
chair and say, we probably should, leave that kind of feedback to the, something we don't do in a public meeting, to
Mhm.
Janice and, and not, we don't manage, we, the board, don't manage people directly. And Janice, I think, enough said for now, and we're all know they're working their tails off here. Can I summarize, I think, the concern, back to Cheryl and what I'm hearing, Janice, and I think everybody else is, we feel, but I think you do too, a sense of urgency to fill that vacant position. And, and if you could confirm that you're going to do everything in your powers to find that, get that position filled. But obviously we have to do it the right way with the right person. Is that right?
Well, I am considering reorganizing.
Well, and we heard
and
that too.
Changing that
Right.
position altogether.
Right.
So it will mean that I may hire an additional maintenance person and then move someone up to a
Yeah.
director of maintenance without the modernization.
No,
component.
that's.
But there are some things that.
Within that, that's obviously,
Looking to-
you've said that,
Yeah.
but I also put it in context, before you came on board a few years ago.
Yeah.
We were down, I think Ed was the one who first recognized us in a budget, that he did some analysis, if I
Oh,
remember.
just.
And just the
The
ratio.
guideline is in
Right.
one of the public.
So we fought to get that one additional position.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of feeling that, you can't, it'd be nice to have a little bit extra capacity, especially when things go bluey,
Yeah.
and so.
And, as I said, our guys are doing a great job. We're doing some preventative work now.
Yeah.
And initiating a preventative maintenance program. But I can't say enough about the work.
But
that
we
the
should
guys
give
are doing.
Cheryl the time to get things sorted
Yeah.
and get her feet on the ground too. I think that's, in fairness,
I
we should do
totally
that.
support that.
Yeah, okay, let's go on. I'm
Uh,
looking at my watch now. I'm
uh,
gonna start pushing everybody along here a little bit here, okay?
So the next item is that the capital fund, the federal capital fund action plan has been approved by Mara O'Brien from HUD. And that's something that you all voted on last at the March meeting. And I did put some copies in your packet to sort of show you what the work schedule will look like. It also includes the repositioning amounts as well. So our next process in the 5-year goal is to, complete our 5-year plan, which will also talk about our repositioning and the work activity that's scheduled.
So just to clarify for everybody, there are two 5-year plans that sometimes get mixed up with each other. There's a 5-year capital plan, which is in the board packet.
Yep.
And talks about money, over the 5 years. And then there is a 5-year PHA plan, the official terminology
An
for that.
administrative plan.
And it has goals and missions and commitments to this, that, and the other thing.
The agency.
And Angie got going on it, and then the COVID pandemic hit. And it kind of got lost in the shuffle here, and Cheryl is picking up the pieces here, so.
So this will be, that plan, 5-year PHA 5-year plan will be on the next agenda. It'll be a standing agenda until we've actually voted on that plan and send it back to HUD.
And one of the reasons we also discovered, unfortunately, that it's on the critical path to approving the agenda item for F2. That you may have read in here is that you have to have your new 5-year PHA plan into HUD first before the board is allowed to approve the going forward with the repositioning application. So that's always all of a sudden taken on a new sense of urgency, at least on the part of yours truly here. So, but we did track it down, and it was one of those things that just got lost in the craziness of the pandemic.
Yep. And Caitlin
Chaos
Johnson, our HUD specialist, has been very supportive and helpful to me in this process. When I'm really looking forward to completing this plan. It's something that I was excited about at the initiation of this plan back in 1998.
Yeah, so, and Angie got it partially completed. We actually dug that out, so.
So we need to include the repositioning information in the 5-year plan. So that's. will
And I
probably
want
be
to
a
say
Small.
one more item of history back, back at the beginning of the Angie administration, we hired Jamie Berryman as a consultant to do the 5-year PHA plan and do the AUD, authorized, what am I forgetting? The AUP, the rules and regulations for the federal properties for leasing and everything else like that. And Jamie Berryman then got sick and just dematerialized without either one of those critical literally.
I was gonna ask for an update on her health. Anybody know?
I don't have any new update.
She was a great
uh,
person.
And Angie, kind of got the AUP done. And got halfway through to getting started on the other one, and then the pandemic, hit, and here we are, so. Okay. Life happens.
Any other questions?
75th anniversary.
So that's a standing item. We are putting together a committee, Lori, Blair, Sandy Robinson, Jean from Be Kind Needham, and we're looking for a resident. We're hoping to meet next month to start the planning process. The goal is to try to have a celebration early September. So we'll keep you updated on the progress of that.
Okay.
The
I'm
next
here.
item. The next item is just an informational item. Steve Merritt, Nada Sanchez and I met with the chief of police on this item. He was very gracious to host us, introduce, have a meeting with me as the new ED, and talked about how, the many ways that they reach out to our community and provide support to us. This MOU is one of those. It's an extra service to make sure that all our residents are safe.
Okay.
Now,
Memorandum of understanding.
were there any changes made to this MOU?
No, there were no
It
changes
just
made.
read on.
Yeah.
So let me give everybody a little context for that. It's scary that I'm the one who has all this context here. So if you recollect, we had the terrible murder situation with Laura Schifrina back in 2017 or 18, somewhere like that. And that was the year, I wasn't chair, but that was the year we had a year's worth of board meetings with 50 people attending every single time, residents that is, because everybody's very upset about it, understandably. And one of the things we discovered is that we only, all residents were being background checked, but they were being Corey background checked using the state Corey system.
Only.
The state Corey system was the new quote unquote incarnation that was put in place in 2011 or 12 or something like that. And it was reformed so that it only had certain information in it and not other information in it, because it was a matter of social justice. So I'm not trying to dump on anything one way or the other, but if one has something in your background check, at some point it should drop off the edge and not be in there anymore. But more importantly, it was discovered that it does not include interstate records. That's covered by another background check system that's used throughout the country called the III system. And I forget what III stands for, but it's an acronym. You can look up in Wikipedia, but it's the FBI background check thing. It's the federal thing. But we were not background checking any residents, new tenants coming in. And so after many meetings of discussing whether this is the right thing to do, we did decide that it was the right thing to do. But we, the housing authority, don't have the power to put in the information. We can collect the information in the application, but we ourselves can't use the system legally.
Okay.
But we discovered from another housing authority that that you can you ask your police department to do it for you. And that was the genesis of this original agreement, that way back when, to make it possible for it to be safer, for a little bit safer for our residents with respect to new tenants coming into our program. And that is the background. And the other thing we discovered is back then, interestingly, is only very few housing authorities were doing the interstate background check. That the vast majority of them were not doing it. So wasn't like we were somehow out of touch or out of sync with other housing authorities, large or small. But we just wound up with this terrible situation we found ourselves in, and collectively decided this was the right way to go.
Well, thank God we have that in place.
I agree.
So-
And Ada does a great job of compiling that information and sending it on to our chief of police.
All right, number 9, staff update. Sorry, I just wanted to get that in the record a bit, because
Thank
these
you.
things are getting lost from executive director to executive director. And I keel over dead tomorrow.
Yes.
At
and
least
I
you'll know about this
appreciate
one
that,
there.
And
So,
I felt a little uncomfortable about,
yeah, it was a, it was a tough decision,
Yeah.
but I think we're very comfortable with it
yes,
now.
absolutely.
D9.
9, very quickly, I can't say enough about the staff that we have in place at Needham Housing Authority. Everyone is amazing. We're all engaged in training. Nada, Salim, and I attended the PHA Web Conference in Connecticut. Nada and I are also attending an performance and personnel workshop or training on Friday, the 28th, and then on the 2nd, we're attending a occupancy cycle. We hope to have our housing, property, federal and state housing managers attend Section 8 training as well to provide more support to NADA and of course what's coming down the pike. Nate, our Blair, our state property manager, has been notarized. She's filled out application and paperwork to become a notary, which is a great benefit to us as we, again, move forward. And all the paperwork that will be coming our way that will need to be notarized, I'm pretty sure. So we're taking care of that for Blair, and she's excited to do that. So I just wanted to say that real briefly. I know that that's sort of a new thing. You guys aren't usually hearing a staff update, but I really wanted to take the time to emphasize how awesome the staff is. Every single person works hard and is committed to the work. So I wanted to say that. Any questions?
It's great to hear.
Well, I'd like to say thank you to Blair for the fabulous flyer she did for this.
Blair is
Yeah.
very talented.
Adorable.
Not
She's
only
very
does she-
creative.
Very creative, and she also translates them in the English, in the language for the majority of the population that needs that translation. She's very thoughtful and very caring. Just amazing group of folks. And you always hear me talk about NADA. NADA takes very good care of the agency and everyone and in general. I always refer to her as an asset, and she's just phenomenal. She does it all.
I've been hearing great
Nada,
things for
Nada,
a
I want-
long time.
Nader, I
And
want you
you-
to know, I think you're fabulous, and I'm the resident commissioner. I have to speak for different people. Nothing against you. You do a great job and you're fabulous, okay?
Oh, I'm just gonna
Thank you.
gently say again, as chair, that very much appreciative of all those comments, but we shouldn't be doing staff personnel.
I know, as a newbie, I just wanted
Yeah.
to put that out there to assure the
We
board
need-
that the train is moving on time and
We-
we're doing a great job.
We're gonna move on to item 10. We do
10.
get to do personnel evaluations of the executive
All
director.
right.
So-
I really felt like I wanted to say that.
No,
It's-
that's
it's a
okay.
great
That's
group.
fine.
And so my goal statement is something that I'm working on. I'm looking to identify key areas to focus on and to put them into my goal statement. I will determine a time frame based on some conversations that you and I had, Reg, in terms of achieving those goals. Of course, I will align my goals up with the with the agency's mission. And I will create a action plan
fabulous.
on achieving those goals. So I hope to have something more concrete for you at your annual meeting next month.
Well, it's 2 meetings, so we wouldn't do it at the annual meeting.
Okay?
We'll do it at the regular meeting next month.
Yeah, okay.
The annual
sorry.
meetings
That's
on
right.
as a separate meeting
That's
within a
right.
meeting here, so.
Exactly.
But-
So I won't go into any more detail than that, but we'll have a more concrete document for you at the regular board meeting next month.
And then we're at 11, any other issues or updates or shall we move on here?
There was, the ARPA thing had an addendum that you didn't. Catch or
Okay,
consider. and
we're
I
going
just had one-
backwards on the agenda here, so.
You know, I just realized that on page 60, number 2, under approved work items. It says to complete said items at the lowest practicable cost. And my question is NHA required to take the lowest bid?
Well, it is a wording that is in everything that we ever do. But if there is a judgment factor that can be applied.
Right.
It's the lowest qualified bidder, obviously, so if somebody comes in with a really low ball thing and is deemed to be not qualified to do
Right.
whatever,
That's
this
right,
roof,
thank you.
yeah.
That's the answer
But
to my question.
other than that, yes, we are strong pressure under chapter 30B, which is our main procurement law
If it's too good to be true.
well,
Exactly.
what you really have to do is write your specifications and do your evaluation according to the book. Which then allows you to make those judgments and weed out the low ballers, that inevitably you find here.
And also page 61, 62, and 63, and 64 all have typos, very carelessly done at the end of many sentences here.
Okay,
What's that on the MOU, Penny?
No, on the additional terms and conditions.
and I believe that's from our friends
Yeah,
in DHCD here.
you guys didn't.
Okay,
They don't
That's
have
not
it.
Cheryl's fault.
all right.
No.
They don't have.
I'm gonna move on in the interest of time. Anything about the resident services coordinator report?
No, one of the things I just want to mention is that Lori's doing a great job. She's committed to the homework club until the end of the school year of the homework books after school program. She's there 3 days a week with tutors. And the Babson staff is ending their time with us the end of April, and she will continue with Nobles and Greena until their school year ends. And so I'm really just grateful that it's continuing and that the kids have that availability to them. We will meet with Karen Bourne in the fall to restructure the program, which will most likely, the way we're discussing it now is that it will start at the Elliott School in the fall and then transition to 28 Captain Robert Cook Drive.
Do we have anyone from the high school coming, Cheryl?
No, we do not.
Have we this year? That
No,
you know
we
of?
have not. No,
Since-
just Nobles and Batson.
I get the
Yeah.
impression that there are sometimes, and I may be wrong
Mm-hmm.
about this report, she's doing so many great things all across.
Yeah,
the whole campus.
phenomenal.
But, is she ever alone with those in the after school program, with those kids? Because she shouldn't be. She needs to have a list of volunteers. I sort of supplied you.
Right, so they're there, the Babson
Yeah,
folks are
fine.
there until the end of the month. And then the Nobles students will start, I believe they end though before the public schools. And then at that point, we'll probably have another staff person go in and help her be some assistance to her. But she's very good, she keeps them, following the rules. And it's there strictly for homework now because, that's the key thing right now. But she's doing a phenomenal job. I'm very excited about the work that she does. And our residents are warming up very nicely to her.
Good.
Okay, we're gonna move on to agenda item F. We covered some of it here, so I think we're on the home stretch on the meeting. We covered F1, which is the Linden Chambers conceptual design, which was quite great to see that. As I mentioned before, 2, 3, and 5, we made a call yesterday evening that they're not fully baked enough for the board and it just, that's the way things work out. But we, number 2 is waiting on getting better visibility on when we can get the 5-year capital plan
That's right.
going, and we don't need to comment on that
Okay.
tonight unless you have some.
Well, it is a 45-day period.
Well, there's a waiting period. I was gonna, we did have a public hearing on it, so.
No, we did not.
Well, so maybe we didn't. So there is that issue, that will hold up F2.
I'm sorry.
Even
Chair.
when it ready to go. So, we should double check, because there's a lot of pandemic craziness going on there, so, F3 and F5, we do want to get to sooner rather than later, so that's the A&E Designer Services RFP for Seabeds and Cook, because that's a long lead time item to put that out, wait people to responses and so forth and so on. It's a very similar process to what we went through, that Ed, you were on the selection committee, that whole, type of process we need to do again. The only difference is we don't have DHCD looking over our shoulders, but we still have to do the same sort of competitive bidding thing. And there's a 70-page RFP document that has been sitting in my inbox for a few days, but and Cheryl's and Steve's, but we've just been so busy, we've not been able to get to it here. So we want to make sure we read it through and there aren't any obvious gotchas in there before we bring the rest of the board in. Likewise, on the PRI budget, we've made very good progress in the last month on that since we last reported. But we still have a gap between what we think we need to spend for pre-development expenditures and where the money is going to come from. So we're basically working on closing that gap. And of course, that assumes that we're going to be getting some CPA funding, hopefully, on May 1st. So that leaves us with agenda item F4. So that contract was in the board packet. So another thing, now in the last board meeting, is we are in an extremely tight time frame to figure out the zoning that needs to be done for the Linden Chambers site to do not just only phase 1A, but 1B and 2. You have to change all the zoning at the same time. And what makes it very tight is there's only one funding cycle from DHCD per year with all the millions of dollars we need for Linden and Chambers. And the preliminary applications go in for that at the end of October and early November. And if you miss that window of opportunity, you have to wait a whole number of the year to put the application in. But you can't put the application in unless you have your zoning nailed down. So, that's either done through fall town meeting, or it's done through a friendly 40B, or it's done through discovering in the records of the town, the ancient records of the town, that we already have the zoning we need because of town meeting warrants that were passed in the 60s. Anybody here know Robert Smart or Bob Smart?
Yeah.
So Bob has been doing this work forever for a very great reputation. The advice we got from Lee Newman and the planning board is quick hire a local zoning council and figure out which one of these three approaches are the best approach. And the planning board said this very cooperatively, saying, look, if you need to take this to town meeting, we're happy to do a hurry up offense for you to do that. But time is short for fall town meeting if you know how these things move in the town. So we went ahead and reached out to Bob. He was gracious enough to accept this, even though he's winding down his practice from a retirement point of view. And we actually had our first meeting yesterday afternoon, where we were going through town clerk's office, going through dusty old books of 1960, went back to 1957 to 1968 town meeting records. And Bob already just generated his first report to me just as I was walking out the door, today. And so that's on a hurry up offense basis here. So we're going to ask the the board to, be gracious enough to approve Bob's contract here. Does anybody have any questions?
I move to approve Bob's contract.
Okay, Bob, Attorney Robert Smart's contract, yes,
Esquires.
yeah. They have a second from Commissioner Scheidler. Any other questions on that? Hearing no further discussion, I will call the roll. Reg Foster votes yes.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny for votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
And if you let Bob know about that tomorrow morning, I would
Okay.
appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
He also gave us a bit of a discount on his regular commercial rate here because he believes in the overall mission here.
Good.
So that's number 4. And then everybody got the normal monthly report as to what CHA has been up to. Any questions on that report from anybody? I mean, we're cooking along. It's a basic report I have to make here, so for tonight. Okay, we get to G. G1 roofing replacement, all these updates, I guess.
This is an update. There's a pre-construction meeting scheduled for the 24th of April for the roof replacement project at Captain Robert Cook Drive. That will include the architect, the contractor. Greg will be at that meeting. I will be there. And then the paving project at Seabed's Way, I have one proposal for that project. I do need to obtain another proposal to satisfy procurement requirements, and I will be bringing that forward to you. And then the Cooks After School program, as I said, is going well, and students are coming to get their homework help.
You said you had a proposal for Seabed's Way. Does that include Captain Robert Cook? Aren't they together?
Sorry, I left off Captain Robert Cook. But
Don't
we
forget
do
about
have
me, Cheryl.
well, a paving project proposal. I just didn't want to say it that way. For Seabed's Way and Captain Robert Cook Drive. It's a civil engineer, Michael Carter. It's a great proposal, but we can't do anything. We have to satisfy procurement requirements and get another proposal. And then we can decide which way we're going to go.
Any comments or questions from anybody?
Was there something in there about the roofs for Captain Robert Cook?
Construction meeting
Yeah.
on April 24th.
Or-
Architect,
Okay,
contractor, Greg, myself. That kind of thing.
okay.
We're gonna have, it'll be a Zoom meeting. And then the new business, as you see, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, so we're moving on to the last agenda item, new business, H1 and H2. So as we discussed, the board has discussed for some period of time, starting with H1, with Cheryl coming on board, we all absolutely want her to have every element of support possible to be, fabulously successful in their first year, recognizing that first year is a tough first year for any new executive director. After some discussion, I think everybody in this room knows Cynthia Howe. What, is that fair? You don't. So you didn't overlap. So Cynthia's I recognize we got this information out late to the board. But she has a very good reputation. She was one of our original executive, well, not original, but an executive director, the dawn.
It was the best one we ever had.
And Janice knows her well. She then left Needham Housing Authority and went on to have a very impressive career that you can see in her resume, and then has now become an independent consultant. Also has the benefit of not only of having all of that experience in both housing authorities and in the private sector doing basically the same thing. But she's also known to Cheryl because Cheryl goes back to the Dawn of the Needham Housing Authority. Well, maybe not that far either, but, and so I interviewed, Cynthia. I knew of her as well. I'd run across her, from time to time. Talked to Cheryl. We, decided that, Cynthia would work with Cheryl up to about 6 hours, to kind of lay out a scope of work that would make sense to Cynthia and to Cheryl and to me. And that's what, Cheryl sent out to you from the field. I think he was still at PHA Web, that reflects are all working on that together. So I would recommend that, the board consider this, contract. The genesis of the contract, by the way, is also the template for the interim executive director agreement that we had with Steve. It's a DHP CD boilerplate. It's actually one of the better ones I've seen from DHCD. I think it's so we kind of tailored it to this particular situation. So it has the same, terms and conditions in terms of the boilerplate. The only thing that we changed about it, of course, is there's no approval from DHCD being required. But otherwise, it's pretty much the same. So it has we're approving it today, but it has a backdated effective date that would allow Cynthia to bill us for the hours that she and Cheryl worked developing this contract. And I think you guys went further than just developing the scope.
We
And
did, she was very, very helpful. Yeah.
and this gives Cheryl's, somebody in her corner that she can, go to when all the inevitable bumps in the road that we know are coming, happen here. So I would recommend, that we adopt this contract.
I shall move.
And,
I
moved by Ed,
second.
second by Janice. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Reg
Arnold.
Foster votes yes.
Ed Schreiber votes yes.
Kirk, aye.
Janice Bennett votes yes.
Great. And the second one, BH2, of course, I want to just start, actually, we don't have anybody online here, I don't think, and so forth, so. But of thanking Steve for rescuing us a year ago. And had we had a little bit more time, we would have had a little bit more. Cheryl and I have a token of appreciation in the works, but it's not ready here because it was just great that you have done everything that you've done. I don't know how I could have gotten through this year without your steady, hand and your experience and your wealth of connections and networking and everything else. And it's just been a true pleasure working with you. And we are just so lucky you saved us from the situation we were in pretty much this time last year. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't know if
Indeed.
anybody else has anything else they want.
Yeah.
I move that we accept the contract.
Second.
Second.
We have a tie for second from Janice and Penny. We will record that in the minutes here. A photo finish. Before, just by way of further discussion, I just want to say that once we kind of figured out what was right thing to do with Cynthia, Cheryl and I kind of decided, there's still an awful lot of balls in the air, and it's going to get nothing but more complicated and more death to spine and bumps in the road, largely coming out of the PRI thing, because we are taking on two huge projects at the same time. And there's just too much to do. And I myself, I have to say, I've been bumping up against my quite considerable limits, available capacity of volunteer time in terms of just trying to get things done. And I just think it'll be enormously helpful to have Steve in our corner as an extra pair of hands, an extra mind and everything we're doing.
I think you have agreement on it, right?
And no, I just want to get that into the record as
Before the
well.
internet.
Well, and, oh, before the internet gets. The other thing is, there are other tasks that might come up, as directed by the executive director. So hearing no further discussion on my bloviating,
I just want to say thank you all for your support. It means a great deal. Thank you.
yeah. This is a great team we've got here. So, hearing no further discussion, I will call the roll. Reg Foster votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Any Kirk votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Okay, so that's approved, and then, community room and shared use of update. You want to,
This information, or we can.
just
it'll-
information, we'll
Yeah.
postpone it until next time around. Okay, great. So we're at the end of a very long agenda. I'm glad, actually, we didn't have time, we didn't have these, other agenda items prepared. I do want to ask, what days next week wouldn't work for the board members that are here for having a special board meeting? I'm talking about Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
During the day or at night.
Either one, yeah.
We need to go and look at calendars.
Okay. Maybe you could do that, it's just, Eleanor isn't here, we'll have to do it by email anyway, yeah.
No, not Tuesday or Wednesday during the day.
Okay,
But,
all right. So if you and Janice, if you could just drop me an email and Cheryl an email as to what does work in your calendar. And anything that
Wednesday or Thursday.
absolutely doesn't work, like you couldn't possibly make it work, that would be great.
No
right.
problem.
And do I hear a call, a motion for adjournment? Penny does,
Second.
seconded by Ed. Reg Foster votes.
I
Janice?
vote aye, if you can hear me.
Okay. Yeah, be worried there for a second. Thank you very much, everybody.
We did
Thank
it.
you all. Have a great
you.
All right.
evening.
Bye, everybody. Good night.
Thank you, guys.